The meta in this current season is dominated by tanks. The game has tank roamers, tank junglers, and tank EXP laners. In a lineup composed of 3 tanks in these situations, the gold and mid lanes must be filled with damage dealers, with the gold laners being the primary heroes that dish out damage. The mid laners and roamers are commonly the ones that give anti-heal. However, if you are in a situation where the enemy's roamer, jungler, and/or EXP laner is a tank, while your lineup with 4 squishy heroes only has 1 tank, or you have a roaming assassin or support that is also as squishy as any mage, how will you counteract to that? Hello myopes. In this video, you will experience the power of your chosen hero against the durable and powerful tanks. If you like this video, please give it a thumbs up and subscribe. I will only be focusing on the damage dealers when it comes to countering tanks. It's because the squishy support roamers don't have enough damage to counteract the tank's durability. This video is a general build to counter tanks, therefore, this is not a build for your hero of choice. Don't worry myopes, you can leave a comment for me to upload hero-specific builds to counter tanks. The emblem to counter tanks is, obviously, the Assassin Emblem. The adaptive penetration is the Assassin Emblem's greatest selling point, along with the movement speed. If you are a marksman user who uses the Marksman Emblem to try to counter any tank you come across, you are more prone to dominance ice regardless of your build. If you are a mage user who uses the Mage Emblem to counter tanks, you are weaker against the combination of Athena's shield and radiant armor, regardless of your build. And casting any skill will trigger the passive effect of the enemy's Antique Cuirass, regardless of the type of damage you deal. The enemy's Antique Cuirass is more effective when you are a physical spellcaster. Investing in Thrill to increase your adaptive attack makes your damage useless against tanks. Investing in Swift to increase your attack speed makes you prone to the enemy's dominance ice. Investing in Fatal to increase your critical chance and critical damage forces you to buy critical items and rely mainly on critical hits to deal damage. Against tanks with blade armor, your critical damage will be reduced, and you will have an increased risk of dying, unless you have lifesteal items to compensate for the lost HP. Investing in Rupture to increase your adaptive penetration gives an edge to your damage against any enemy you come across. Like I said, the higher the penetration, the higher the damage multiplier. Physical attack and magic power are simply damage additives, not damage multipliers. The damage multipliers come from physical and magic penetration. So if you use the item-reliant weapons master talent on any of your heroes to counter tanks, expect to be underfarmed in any stage of your game. In other words, expect to be the enemy's happy meal. Since the weapons master is already mentioned as useless at level 1, the first option to increase your damage against tanks early on is the Master Assassin, with 7% damage boost, as long as your objective is to engage in 1v1 fights or to pick off a lone enemy hero that doesn't call for backup. But just expect that it becomes useless when facing 2 or more enemies. And as much as you believe that you also need Warcry for further damage boost, the Warcry talent treats hitting multiple enemy heroes as 1 instance of dealing damage, and it also treats multi-hit attacks as 1 instance of dealing damage. You need 3 instances of dealing damage to trigger the 6% damage boost, regardless whether it's from your basic attacks or your skills. After 6 seconds, you have to do the whole process again.
Only the strongest shall survive. Within. Retreat is never an option. Nothing else scares me. No.
All sources of damage boost are useless when you don't have increased penetration to begin with. In the same way, all sources of damage reduction are useless when you don't have increased defenses. In Myopia's priorities of increasing your damage, penetration is your highest priority, damage boost is your middle priority, and attack increase is your lowest priority. In reducing the enemy's damage, defenses are your highest priority, damage reduction is your middle priority, and HP increase is your lowest priority. When picking DPS heroes, use Quantum Charge. It consistently gets the number 1 spot as seen in the last patch, meaning it still remains as the top talent among all tier 3 talents. You can trigger the effects of Quantum Charge on any enemy unit or structure you deal damage to: heroes, minions, creeps, turrets, or bases. 1 basic attack, whether normal or enhanced, or 1 skill that counts as a basic attack, restores HP and grants a 30% movement speed boost. The effects of Quantum Charge give you more chances of chasing any targeted enemy, outrunning an unconcealed set, or buying more time for them to chase you. But the heal does not scale with your HP, it heals in a flat value, although it scales with your hero's level. When picking burst heroes, use Lethal Ignition, but there's a requirement. You will deal damage greater than or equal to 7% of the enemy's max HP for 3 times to trigger its burn effect, so be sure that you also have skills, including passives, that deal HP-based damage. Each burn tick scales with your hero's level, and the talent deals damage 3 times for 2 seconds, starting with the 3rd time that you deal massive damage. It's easy to trigger lethal ignition against squishy enemies, but against tanks, you have to have either a full build, a high level gap, or both, if you have the level and item advantages. Unlike the quantum charge, the lethal ignition only affects enemy heroes, and it doesn't give benefits to the user. Still, it reclaims its number 2 spot, previously taken by Temporal Rain upon its release. The slow effect of the weakness finder is inferior to that of a thunder belt equipped by a tank, but its duration is equal to that of a blade armor, which is 1 second. The duration of its attack speed reduction is 2 seconds shorter than that of Dominance Ice, but it is 20% more potent. Using basic attacks to reduce the cooldown of the weakness finder will make its cooldown 1 second shorter than that of the thunder belt. And it's impossible for you to kill a tank alone, unless you are a Fed Martis or Brody that deals an insane amount of damage through the course of the game. That's why Killing Spree is a useless tier 3 talent. If you have 0 kills from the beginning to the end of your game, what even is your fucking point equipping the Killing Spree? It restores HP and grants 20% movement speed boost, and the heal scales with your lost HP, but that only happens if you are the one killing an enemy. So if you are someone who craves for savages and hungry for multiple kills, you'd be dead before you have your chance.
True, and yeah, that's pretty true. That's true, and yeah, that's true. That's true. That's true. That's pretty true. That's pretty true. I mean, that's true. Yeah, that's true. That's true. That's fucking true. That's how it is.
There are 4 options to slay tanks, but I won't tell what these ways are. I will just explain what each option does, and the first one is something a little bit confusing on your end. The first option of dealing damage against tanks has something to do with either your hero's abilities, or buying items like Demon Hunter Sword, Wishing Lantern, or Glowing Wand. This is called HP-based damage. There are 2 types of HP-based damage when it comes to your hero's abilities and items. And I made a table for each type for you myopes, this will be shown later. The first type is dealing damage based on the enemy's HP, useful if you are using damage dealers. The second type is dealing damage based on your HP, useful if you are using tanks. Each type is subdivided to based on max HP, based on extra HP, based on current HP, and based on lost HP. Take a look at your chosen heroes and see how much damage they can deal. The greatest counter to HP-based damage is increasing defenses on any tank that has damage reduction and/or shield from his or her abilities. This leads to the second option of dealing damage against tanks, and that involves reducing the enemy's defenses. This has 2 types, penetration and defense reduction. Earlier I showed you this formula, and it's time to put it into good use. I mentioned earlier that the recommended emblem combination is Assassin Emblem plus Rupture if you aim to counter tanks. Then your hero has abilities where penetration items can, or cannot, be used. For the second time, take a look at your chosen heroes and see which penetration items are recommended for them. Certain heroes and items have abilities that reduce the enemy hero's defenses before any form of penetration kicks in. This is a tabular list of heroes and items that have defense reduction from their abilities. Take note, myopes, that defense reduction takes effect before penetration, not the other way around. The flat defense reduction takes effect first, then the percentage defense reduction. The percentage penetration from either the Malefic Roar or the Divine Glaive only takes effect after the enemy's defense is already reduced by your hero's abilities. Then the flat penetration follows after the percentage penetration. And there are 3 types of damage, differentiated by the color of the damage text. First is physical damage, expressed in red text. Next is magic damage, expressed in purple text. Last is true damage, expressed in white text, and this is the next option of dealing damage against tanks. The higher the enemy's defense, the lower your damage, regardless whether it's physical damage or magic damage. The higher your penetration, the higher your damage, still, regardless whether it's physical or magic. But speaking of true damage, it bypasses the enemy's defenses, and ignores any form of damage reduction. Therefore, when using these certain heroes listed here, you can deal true damage without the need of penetration. Of course, like I said earlier in this video, if you want hero-specific builds to counter tanks, myopes, please leave a comment in this video. However, that doesn't cover all sources of true damage. Your turrets, bases, and spawn areas deal true damage to any enemy hero. The Lord deals true damage to any hero who tries to take it down, regardless whether you, your allies, or your enemies try to secure the Lord. And if you have an orange buff, the buff also deals true damage to the nearest enemy hero it targets, along with giving you bonus stats and inflicting a slow effect. There are 3 ways to counter the true damage. All sources of damage, including true damage, are absorbed by any enemy that has a shield. However, the true damage from the execute spell can still kill a shielded enemy. Most sources of damage, including true damage, are reduced by the passive effect of Twilight Armor, provided that the amount of damage dealt is above 500. And since true damage bypasses defenses, you have to buy defense items that give high HP. The greatest counter to most sources of true damage is using Twilight Armor on any tank that has a shield, unless, well, you have an allied Esmeralda who steals and ignores shields. Last but not least, the 4th option of slaying tanks is
Request backup! Request backup!
this.
Request backup!
This.
Request backup! Request backup! Request backup!
That's right, backup from allies. Sometimes, against a max level tank with a full build, you cannot simply deal damage to a tank and go for a kill alone, even if you are also a max level hero with a full build. This is unless you have a clear advantage in the first place. Tanks are still durable regardless of how you counter them. You need backup from your allies to speed up in killing at least one tank, unless you or your teammates have, well, multiple reasons. The build to tank everything is Myopia's ultimate guide to enhance the tank's durability. This is what it looks like when you are against an enemy tank with any of Myopia's builds to tank everything. I have to reiterate what I said earlier in this video. When you deal damage to a tank with Dominance Ice, whether by using basic attacks or skills, even with the attack range advantage as a marksman, your attack speed, healing, regen, shield, and lifesteal will all be reduced. When you cast a skill on a tank that has Antique Cuirass, the physical damage from your next skills and basic attacks will be reduced. When you deal magic damage to a tank that has Athena's shield, Radiant Armor, or both, the magic damage from your next skills and basic attacks will be reduced. You can actually poke Athena's passive, to trigger it and have it on cooldown, before you go all out against the tank, but most of you, simply, have a killer instinct. Even if the tank has all the unique passives of the defense items and emblems, you still want to go all out, and burst him or her down, until the tank's HP is 0. That's also a common trait for
someone who is always hungry for savage, equipping the marksman emblem with a mage emblem as their main emblem for their marksman or mages, respectively. Railway Swift is the main tier 1 talent, Weapons Master is the main tier 2 talent, and Killing Spray is the main tier 3 talent, and following the current emblem system we have.
It's the biggest piece of dog shit.
In case we forgot, I expressed the current HP in terms of percentages, since not all of the MLBB heroes are tanks. Certain hero abilities, items, and talents activate when either the enemy or the player reaches a certain HP threshold or below. For hero-specific builds to counter tanks, it will be in the next video. Stay tuned for the updates. And that's all for the general guide to slay tanks. Thank you for watching. If you like it, please give it a thumbs up and subscribe. And as always, I care for you.